Thank you, Claudia. Did you know that women have 17% more probabilities of dying in a frontal car crash? And when they don't die, they have 73% more probabilities of being seriously injured. Why? Women are the worst drivers. It's related to safety. Actually, around the 70s, this dummy was invented to test the cars with human proportions to see if it was safe. They invented this dummy with a height of 1.75 meters and weight 78 kilos, the average proportions of men at the time. So the person who invented something to make cars safer, they invented something to make cars safer for men, not for women. Good morning. My name is Alexandra Puig, and today we're going to talk about breaking the bias in STEM companies. It's important for today that you say hi to your partner, someone in your right or in your left, because you will be talking to each other. I really encourage you to answer some questions that I'm going to do, even to me, or between yourselves if you don't feel like answering to everybody, okay? But first, I want you to get to know your names, maybe a handshake or something, please. Okay, well done. Good. So we will start with a very short game, okay? Let me see if any pair or trio guesses what's the first cause of death for women. First cause of death. Any ideas? What it could be? Cancer? What type of cancer? Breast cancer could be? Any other ideas? Okay, let me give you a clue. These are the 3 symptoms of the first cause of death of women. Nausea or vomiting, weakness and fatigue, cold sweats. Any other guesses now? Okay, let's leave it at that. What's the first cause of death for men? Heart attack, okay. Okay, let me give you a clue as well. These are the symptoms. Okay, yeah, heart attack, looks like it. Okay, it is heart attack. Women's, it's also heart attack. Women's and men's symptoms for heart attack are very different. We don't know it. It's crazy. This happens as well in the medical community. A couple of years ago, they started to realize, and it's something that now it's much more known, but up until now, only symptoms from men have been known. And this means that women go underdiagnosed of a heart attack 50% more times than men. Why does this happen? Well, it used to be very standard practice to eliminate women from studies because, complex hormones, whatever. It was very complex to have them in medical studies, so we just eliminated them. What does this mean? If we want to study heart attack, to be able to maybe do a campaign to show what are the symptoms and to prevent this heart attack, if we only have men in the study, only men's symptoms come up, and we only do a campaign with men's symptoms. And in 2023, people don't know the women's symptoms for heart attack. So actually, I want to pose a question to all of you, especially to women. What would a doctor tell you if you go with these symptoms to them? Nausea or vomiting, weakness and fatigue, cold sweats. Anxiety, stress, hormonal issues, everything but a heart attack. So imagine, it's crazy. Actually, we're very worried about cancer, and we should be, and breast cancer is the first that comes up always for women, and 20% of women die of cancer, but 21.8% of women die of heart disease. So it's crucially important to know these things. Today, we're going to talk about gender bias. We're going to talk about it, especially around STEM. And I want to tell you why it's especially important to talk about it in STEM. So why STEM and why women? We are also going to cover the why don't we realize the biases that surround us? How did we get here? What has happened in the past? What happens in the business world in companies like ours, especially so STEM companies in general? And how do we change it? What can we do to be able to break this cycle? In the first place, for why STEM and why women, we already covered 2 examples of unfairness that appears when STEM does not involve this view, this gender view, having women into account. Okay. First, I want to just remind what STEM is. STEM are the 4 fields that are science, technology, engineering, and math. So what we call technical fields, let's say. Science is the study of the structure and behavior of the physical world. Technology, the study and knowledge of the practical use of scientific discoveries. Engineering is the science of designing and building solutions and tools. And mathematics, the study of numbers and shapes using reasoning and rules for organizing them. So basically, STEM are fields that study the problems that need solutions in the world and design the tools to solve them. So first reason, we already covered it. We had 2 examples of it. It's important to eliminate gender bias in STEM because if we only study problems that are affecting men, we only solve problems for men and not for women. Second reason why it's important, because if there are no women studying STEM, tools will be built only by men and not by women, which have different perspectives. Let's see a video.
For the first time ever, we've completely reimagined the automobile. Introducing the men's only Ford Explorer. With no windshield wipers, no heater, no turn signals. Wait, no rear view mirror? No GPS? Are you kidding? It's missing all the parts created by women. Wow, whose great idea was that? This Women's History Month, Ford salutes the visionary automotive work by women past, present, and future.
This was a very good campaign by Ford. It's funny to see how women also have ideas, different perspectives. So it's especially important to also include women in inventing, in designing, in studying for problems and issues that we may have. And that's when normally a question arises. Why do we care so much about not having women in STEM, but maybe not so much about not having men in education, for instance, because there are a lot of teachers that are women, not so much men. Why is it especially important? STEM and women, and not as important, but still important, education and men. Any ideas? Maybe you can discuss it with your partner. You don't have to tell me. I'll leave you 30 seconds to talk about it a bit. What do you think? Okay, I've been hearing some things. So the thing that we have with STEM is that STEM is one of the fields that is better paid. So having less women in STEM and more women in education contributes to the gender gap, which is very important because in the end, we need a society in which women are independent, have salaries where they can live by themselves and in an independent way. And STEM is a field that is especially well paid. Remember that the gender gap can be caused by a base pay that's different or a pay for performance that's different. This, it's illegal, but it still happens nowadays. Sometimes it's hidden with same job descriptions, but different names in the job descriptions so that it goes unnoticed, but it's actually happening. We also have the vertical segregation. You all know this by a glass ceiling, the fact that women cannot go into higher positions in companies, and horizontal segregation, which is the one that we are talking about today. The fact that different fields have very different salaries, and fields with higher pays are mostly occupied by men, and fields with more women are with lower pays. For instance, some data, okay? This is in 2020, median wage and salary earnings. You can see that STEM occupations have median wages way higher than non-STEM occupations, okay? And also the difference that we have between male and female wages, even in the STEM occupations, okay? So STEM is one of the things to have into account in this horizontal segregation, and so in the gender gap. And by solving this problem that we have, not having women in STEM, we help reducing the gender gap. So I covered 3 reasons why it's important to have women in STEM. I said the unfairness that appears when the world is not designed for women, the lack of perspective that we have when the world is not designed by women, and the gender gap that arises because we don't have women in STEM. We have a 4th one, the fact that STEM is future. Every day we're moving towards technology more and more. What's a hot topic today? The main hot topic today, AI. AI is STEM. And if we don't have women coming into the STEM world, in the future, couple of decades, women will not be prepared for the labor market, because all of the positions will need something about STEM. So it's crucial that we start now to change this. Why don't we realize why these biases appear? Actually, we are victims, all of us, of cognitive biases. Cognitive biases are subjective perceptions that we fall back when we process information based on instincts or habits of thinking, which impair our ability to objectively observe a person or situation. Daniel Kahneman, he's a Nobel Prize winner, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, calls them shortcuts. Shortcuts that the brain uses to be able to process information in a faster, instinctive way in a situation of danger, maybe. And in the end, our brain is capable of analyzing lots of data, but we don't have all the energy that we need to be able to analyze everything that the brain can do. So what we do is we eliminate data to be able to be the most productive with what's really relevant. What does it mean? That there are several cognitive biases that we fall into when we want and we don't want to. So in whichever time. I want to have you make a test. So please be focused, because you need to count how many passes of the ball does the white team make. So people with the white shirts, and I'll ask you later the number of passes. So please count them correctly.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher.
Okay, so I guess some of you had seen the video before. If you had seen it before, you obviously have seen the gorilla. Anyone that didn't see the video before, ever? Okay, did you see the gorilla? Okay, some people yes, some people no. this happens, so some people see the gorilla. When you're very focused on the task, you really don't see it. I've noticed that with adults, the gorilla goes more unnoticed than with kids. And this is amazing because kids, they don't have this attention focus. So, they don't get the passes correct in the number of the count, but they see the gorilla more often. But still, this is an example of selective attention, okay? Selective attention is focusing on a specific task, ignoring the rest. This means that when one of the cognitive biases, the shortcuts that our brain does, is to be able to do one specific task that is important to me, I avoid everything else that surrounds me. I want to make you a question. Have you ever heard someone talking about an unfair situation that they've lived and that you don't really agree? Because I've never seen this happen. Really? Does this happen? I've never seen it. Sometimes happens to everyone. For instance, mothers and fathers with their kids. Really? Really? That what you're telling me, is that true? Because we don't realize, because we don't live it, because it's something that affects us. And this happens as well with males and females. Actually, our reality is different. And we have this happening sometimes. And it's important to remember that we have this selective attention, at least to remember that this happens, so that when someone tells us something that we may have not experienced, maybe, just maybe, we should bear in mind that we've never seen it because it doesn't affect us. It does not mean that it hasn't happened. It's just important to bear this in mind. Second cognitive bias that I want to talk about today is stereotyping, assuming a person has some characteristics because they belong to a group. This one's very famous. Do you know who are experts of stereotyping? The major experts, it's the filming industry. Filming industry, they're very good at stereotyping. And actually there's a test, it's called the Bechdel test, which is an informal test, it's very easy. It's a way to see if a movie has this gender view, okay, let's say. It's very, very easy. There needs to be at least 2 women, only 2, 1 and 2 women in the movie, that's it. They need to have names. They need to talk to each other at some point in the movie, like one phrase, it's fine. And then when they talk to each other, they talk about anything but men. It's crazy. There are lots of movies that don't pass this. I really encourage you to do this game with the movies that you watch. You'll see. Can you think of any movies that don't pass this test, that don't have at least 2 women, or that women that appear don't have names, or that when they talk to each other only talk about men? Any example? I have some, so I'll give you some, but maybe you know about one of them. Sorry? Titanic, okay. I think the female protagonist talks to her mother, but she talks exactly about the guy, always, because mother and daughter, what else they could be talking about? All of these movies don't pass the Bechdel test. All of these movies, and the part 1 of The Godfather, When Harry Met Sally, Back to the Future, Gladiator, all of the movies of James Bond ever, Pirates of the Caribbean, Batman movies, Iron Man movies, okay? All of these don't pass the Bechdel test. Don't have 2 women with names talking to each other about anything other than men. Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer doesn't pass the Bechdel test either. It's a very good movie. I watched it. I hope you've watched it as well. I recommend it, but it doesn't pass the test. And also Oppenheimer is twice sad because Oppenheimer had a very good opportunity to talk about women in STEM. Okay, in Oppenheimer we have Jean Tatlock, who's described as Oppenheimer's lover. Okay, you can see she's a very smart woman in the movie. You can see it, and you can also see that she has kind of problems, and well, she ends up committing suicide. This is history, so it's not a spoiler. But she's a psychiatrist, and a very good psychiatrist of the moment, and they failed to mention that. We have also Kitty Oppenheimer. Kitty Oppenheimer is Oppenheimer's wife. They do mention that she's a botanic biologist, and they even show some scenes in which she really cannot handle motherhood. Okay, she struggles with it, But they failed to mention that she worked for a year in the Manhattan Project. She was analyzing blood samples to see the effect of the radiation of the atomic bomb in human bodies. Manhattan Project is the main topic of Oppenheimer movie, and they failed to mention that. Liz Meitner. Liz Meitner is who we know as the mother of the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer's the father. Liz Meitner is the mother. And Liz Meitner discovered the nuclear fission, what makes it possible for the atomic bomb to happen. Actually, there's a scene in the movie where colleagues of Oppenheimer show this newspaper, hey, a group of scientists has discovered the nuclear fission. This group of scientists is Liz Meitner. Actually, she was offered to participate in the Manhattan Project. She denied, but still, they show a series of scenes of Oppenheimer going to people and asking them to join, and they never thought about including Liz Meitner. It's sad that this happens. But because it's stereotyping and because we have it wired, we don't really realize that women are not talking to each other. You watch a movie and it's fun and that's it. But you don't realize that when they talk to each other, they talk about men. Why cannot be talking about whatever? It doesn't have to be feminist. They can be talking about cooking. It's fine. But mother and daughter cannot be talking about anything else than a boy. Third, cognitive bias that has an impact on how we see the world and why we are sometimes genderly biased, which is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is people's tendency to process information that is consistent with their existing beliefs. Examples of confirmation bias. They say that when you're pregnant, you only see pregnant people in the street. Only no, but you start to seeing more pregnant people. Or that when you want to buy a car, you start to see it in the streets. You never realize that it was appearing so much. This is confirmation bias. Horoscopes, for instance, maybe some of you like them, but they are a very good example of confirmation bias. They tend to be highly interpretative, so you find an interpretation of the words that suits your own perspective of yourself. This is common. There's a phrase of one of the first feminists in the world, they call him that, Pauline de la Barre, that said, everything that was written by men about women should be put under suspect because they are both judge and part. In the end, major part of the studies that have been done about differences between men and women in the past, they have been done by men that they were not like monsters. It was men that had cognitive biases, that had a culture and a biased culture and a gender biased culture. So lots of things that we think we know about differences between men and women may not be true. Now we are starting to realize that some of them are not true, but just now, 2023. So bear in mind that it's important to be critical with the things that we think we know about differences between men and women, what women can do, what men are better at, what all of these things. This leads us to our third topic today, which is how did we get here? So there is a common assumption that we've always been distributing tasks, okay? And this is used to explain why women don't always perform the same tasks as men, and thus why women don't join STEM. If you ask me, I don't really see the relation between hunting and STEM, but still, this is a common explanation for it, okay? And actually, even if that was true, if we did this distribution of tasks in the past, that's a naturalistic fallacy. Naturalistic fallacy is an informal logic which argues that if something is natural, it must be good. It was David Hume who said that the fact that something is does not mean it ought to be. We have lots of things that are not natural and that we agree that are good. Most of us at least. For instance, vaccines or democracy. This is not natural. We are not naturally inclined to vote between us to see who leads. We're not naturally inclined to do that, but almost all of us agree that it's a good way of coordinating ourselves. We also agree that it's not good to have people die of an infection, so we build vaccines, but it's not natural. Prehistorical humans did die because of infections. So question is, if the distribution of tasks between males and females naturally happens, why does that mean that it's the best way of working? Maybe not. Oh, animals do it. Well, yes, animals do it. Animals are also cultural. So we tend to think that because animals do it, because primates also distribute tasks. Primates also learn from their elders behaviors. And lots of our behaviors are learned, are not biological because we are born with a chromosome. Okay? But still, we are still saying that males used to hunt, females used to recollect, fruits and everything, and that's why we are better at different types of tasks. Okay, but now in 2023, a study raised the importance of studying this, and they actually discovered that women used to take part in hunting just as much as men. And actually, they realized that some studies had this confirmation bias. They found remains of bones next to tools for hunting, and they assumed that these remains would be men's remains, a male, okay? And after a while, they studied this, and they confirmed that it was female. But people seeing the remains, because they were next to tools for hunting, they assumed that it would be men. Imagine how many times this has happened in the past. Also, we tend to think that brains from men and women are different. We are wired different. That's why we realize we do different tasks, okay? There are starting to appear some studies that show that cognitive differences between men and women can be related to society, to culture. They did a study, these differences in brains, in the National Academy of Sciences, in which they realized cognitive differences, were higher in countries with more gender discrimination. Countries with more gender equality had less differences in the cognitive brains between men and women. This is not something we can confirm today, okay? But still, it's something that in the past has been studied the wrong way. In the 40s, I think, scientists used to open brains, so open heads of dead people, obviously, and they studied the brains once they were developed of someone that is dead, that has lived a whole life. Brains are very flexible. So what we do throughout our lives, because we are men or women, and men drive and women don't, so men when they die at 70s, 80s at some point, or 90s, they will have the spatial ability very developed because they are used to have them up or be driving. And then we study these brains and conclude that men are better at spatial distribution. So just realize that just now neuroscience has been having a crucial point, and now we can start to be studying these things. But it's important to be critical with all the knowledge that we have from the past. Here's some data, though. Graduates by field in 2021 in the OECD. OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Countries from the first world basically appear here, okay? These are the numbers, okay? And the order of choice of females and males. Disregard the numbers because it's not important how many exactly, but I wanted you to see the order of choice, okay? If you see here, there are 10 fields, only 4 of them don't follow the same order: health and welfare, education, engineering, and ICT. If we take this out, the rest follow exactly the same order of choice. I did this in 2017, the results were the same. 2018, results were the same. They change order, but they change the order in the same way in men and women. Only 4 fields change orders between male and females: health and welfare and education, engineering and ICT. This is 10. ICT is information and communication technologies. So these are the ones that are STEM. Those are the ones that are massively occupied by women. I think it's not a coincidence that this is very related to our culture and what we come from. Sorry? We will cover that now. because I am going to talk about what happens in the business world. And it's a very good question because we really want to know, but what's the number? I asked that question to myself. Is it really something? So when you divide all the students into the three main, pure sciences, social sciences, arts and humanities, you see that in pure sciences, there's quite, there's 40%, 48, 45, something like that, percent of women. But if you take out all the health studies that, in sciences, there's medicine, etc., that goes in. If you take this out, numbers go to 34%. 34% of women in the STEM fields. This is in universities. From this 34%, only 26% of women will end up working in STEM. To be fair, in men, it wouldn't be the 100%. All of those in white would not end up really working in STEM. It would be 4%, but 40%, sorry. But in the end, we have 4 males for every 1.5. It's actually 3.9 versus 1.3, but to make it more simple. But let's say 1.5 for every 4 male. And we have 3 problems here of why this is happening. The first is lack of motivation and interest. Women, girls are not choosing to study these fields because of lack of role models, lack of interest. I don't like this. But likes and interest, we tend to think that it's something that we are born with, and it's not. We are not born with interests. Interests come up based on what you see, on what you think is interesting. You saw that the most chosen field was business and law, and the least chosen one was agriculture. If we had done these numbers in the 18th century, agriculture would have been the first. So the choice is not something that is strictly genetically inclined. Interest and what's important in society also affects our choices. So lack of motivation and interest is one of the problems that we have. Second one, self-efficacy beliefs. We will cover what this is, but it means that women don't see themselves capable of doing this. And this affects women applying for positions in STEM. And finally, the glass ceiling. Even when they apply, so even when they have studied STEM and they have the courage to apply to STEM positions, then they find a world that it's full of men, which is fine, but maybe they are the weird ones. They are the only ones. They don't see that much support. So they have a harder glass ceiling than in other fields with more women, more 50-50, okay? Lack of motivation and interest. What are the possible causes? Stereotypes, role models, practice, girls that don't play with determined, so specific games that can give you different abilities, okay? The fact is that there is no proof that women or girls are worse than boys at STEM subjects. It's strictly a matter of interest. Self-efficacy beliefs. What's the possible causes? More demand for perfection for women, more risk aversion for women, fear of rejection of women. But it's a fact is that women apply for fewer positions and particularly apply less for positions that are more senior than their current one. This is from a study from LinkedIn. And actually the confidence gap is bigger for women. When you ask a group of people, what grade you think you will get in whatever test, and then you made them do the test, men are normally more close to guessing what they will take. Women have a higher gap. Confidence in women is very low compared to men's. Obviously, I'm not talking about all women, but average women have higher confidence gap. So this will make them not apply for jobs because I don't think I'm good enough. Maybe I studied a STEM degree, but this is so difficult because we think STEM are more difficult, that we give more prestige to these studies than to education, for instance, which is also very important. But we give more prestige to these studies, so it's hard. I cannot do this. And we have the glass ceiling. We have possible causes like higher pay gap, more workplace discrimination, lack of opportunity. In the end, what we do see in STEM companies is that women are often the only women in their teams. And then we create the only women in the room effect. And this happens. And in the end, we as a society, we are inclined to be talking to these people that have similar things to us. Maybe they like football like us, and a woman can like football, obviously, but it's not as common. So when you go to an after work and you talk to your peers, maybe you talk to peers that are the same gender as you, which means that companies with lots of men and very few women may feel left out. This brings us to a very curious, vicious cycle, because we have lack of interest and motivation of girls. So we only have 34% of STEM students that are women. So we have in the companies women that are the only women in the room. So they face a harder glass ceiling because there are not enough women in the company to help them and to support them. So we have lack of role models. So we have lack of interest and motivation. How do we change that? How do we change that? So in feminism, we talk a lot about equality, okay? When we talk about equality, we are not talking about this. We are not talking about helping everyone, because people have different needs. What would be the objective, what we really want, is to eliminate those barriers, so help is not needed. So people with different circumstances can achieve the same things. This is called justice. This is what we strive for, okay? What would we need for this? We would need a change of mindset. The synonym here would be change of mindset, okay? And for this, you need education, you need role models, and you need gender view. But this is long-term. This takes time, because you start to do it with generations, and when they raise their kids, this mindset maybe has changed. So it takes a couple of generations at least. So what do we do in the meantime, where the barrier is still there because we didn't have this mindset change? What we need is equity, is helping everyone with what they need to achieve equal access to opportunities. When we talk about equality, we're talking about equal access to opportunities. What people do with their opportunities, it's their thing, but at least they have them. And this, positive discrimination measures, which is not very liked. It's not very liked. It's a controversial opinion, but really what you need to have the people that have more difficult circumstances is to give them more than people that already have everything they need to access these opportunities. So what are we talking about? We're talking about taxes discounts, we're talking about quotas, we're talking about HR gender equality measures. Quotas are not very liked because, you know, we won't get the best people at the top. Fine. Have you ever had a boss that's not very good? I mean, it happens. Why? Let's say normal, because I don't want to say mediocre, but normal men should have more opportunities than normal women. Brilliant women will get there because they are brilliant. But normal women should have the same access than normal men to opportunities. And in the end, what do you achieve with this? That you may have for some decades normal women at the top, but their kids will see women that are in STEM fields. So you create role models and you create this change of mindset. So it's not very liked, and you may get for some years something that is not the best situation. But if you don't do this, you will get the worst situation for a lot more years. If you're not convinced yet, let me make another example. So we know that women occupy most of the tasks at the household, maybe not now or not in your houses, but we know that this happens, okay? Women do most of the tasks at home, but now they also have the kids and they have to do both things, and also they have to go to work, so they have to do everything. What would we want? So both men and women do all of the tasks at home. That would be justice, that would be the idea and the objective, right? But when we cannot do this, what do? We help women with some economic help so that they can pay someone else to take care of their kids while they go working, because what we want is women to go into the workplace and to be able to build their career so their kids learn that women also work. This is positive discrimination measures. It's very similar than quotas. And it's giving help to women and not to men. And men also have kids and they have to go to work. And maybe there's one household where men do everything. Okay, but in general, we know that this happens. And if we want to do a change of mindset, we need to go to this help. I want to do a reflection here. These things, justice, education, role models, gender view, this is already happening in schools. For those of you who have kids, you know that kids, now they're different. They see things that we were not taught when we were 10, 5, whatever, okay? Years ago, we didn't have this possibility to be learning these things. But this will mean that maybe in a couple of decades, we have 50-50% of students in STEM, and these girls that studied STEM because they know they can do it, because they don't think they are worse at it, they go to the companies and they will find companies that are not prepared to have women, because there is more gender discrimination, because there is a harder glass ceiling, and maybe they will leave and they will go to other areas where there's more women. This may happen. I'm not saying it will, but it may happen. So we will wait another 2 generations until we change the mindset also in the labor market. So it's important to understand that this is happening. We need to prepare the world for those that are coming, and they are coming. So what we need is to achieve this equity, to maybe in the future get to the justice. I want to take the time to do a big shout out to 6 very important women I think deserve special consideration. The first is Ada Lovelace, the first programmer in the history and creator of the concept of loop. Margaret Hamilton, director of the first division of software engineer at MIT, developed the onboard navigation software for Apollo. Hedy Lamarr, Hollywood actress, but also inventor of the communication systems that allows for nowadays wireless technologies like Wi-Fi. Marisa Mayer, first woman to join the Google engineering team in 1999, now executive director of Yahoo. Debbie Sterling, engineering, founding of Goldilocks, the company that creates STEM toys to foster girls' interest. Very interesting. Search them on Google. And Claudia Golding, economist, Nobel Prize winner this year, 2023, for her investigation in the wage gender gap. So quick wrap up. What I really want you to go out with today, the thoughts that I want you to bear in mind. It's important to have women in STEM to eliminate unfairness, to create different perspectives, to improve gender gap. We don't realize because of biases that we're victim of, and we need to remember that this happen, selective attention, stereotypes, and confirmation bias. In the past, we have done some mistakes like falling into the naturalistic fallacy or having lack of gender view in studies. So we need to be critical with what we know from the past. In the business world, what we have is lack of interest, self-efficacy beliefs, and harder glass ceiling for women. These are the challenges. And what we can do to get equal opportunities is work with positive discrimination measures. I want to do one last personal conclusion. The world believed that women were not prepared for the labor market until they proved they were. Let's not wait for girls to join STEM fields to believe that they can be interested in them. Thank you very much.